Mention first and foremost, we've been having some problem with our IT, with the recording of the audio on our webcast, and we're not sure if it has something to do with the doors and wiring. So we're going to bear with it and see how we do. It's only a matter of our records that we need the voice recording. So, okay, Ida? So I'm going to go through, I'd like to call the Planning Committee meeting to order. Members of the public are advised that our meetings are webcast live by the City of Hamilton and temporarily archived on the City's website. Other individuals in the media may also be audibly and or visually recording this meeting. We also have a new thing to mention, and that's our new doors, which will remain. To avoid disruptions, these doors will remain closed during the meeting, and therefore members of the public will be required to exit through the doors at the top of the stairs, and members of the committee and staff are asked to use the doors leading to the lounges down on the ground level here on our same level. So, Madam Clerk, are there any changes to today's agenda?
Yes, Madam Chair. There are two deferred items. Item 6.1, the delegation from Mike Whaling the airport mini storage from Mount Hope to follow up from previous meetings regarding illegal business in Mount Hope has been deferred to the February 2nd, 2016 meeting. Also, item 8.1, respecting the Hamilton Municipal Heritage Committee Report 15-011, item 2, respecting request to remove 2251 Rymal Road East, former Elfrida Church, from the Register of Property of Cultural Heritage Value or Interest and from the Work Plan of Designation, has been also deferred to the February 2nd, 2016 meeting when the owner of the property is able to attend. We have two added written comments, 6.2 Roman numeral 2 from concerned residents respecting item 6.2 applications from Urban Hamilton Official Plan and Zoning Bylaw Amendment for 20 Art Frank Drive, Stony Creek. Item 6.4 Roman numeral 1 from Lakewood Beach Community Council respecting item 6.4 application for an Urban Hamilton Official Plan Amendment and Zoning Bylaw Amendment for lands located at 101 Shoreview Place, Stony Creek. Copies have been distributed. Also, there's a correction to the draft bylaw, which is Appendix C to item 6.4, application for an Urban Hamilton Official Plan Amendment and Zoning Bylaw Amendment for lands located at 101 Shoreview Place, Stony Creek. Staff had submitted an amended bylaw to replace the one printed in the agenda, and copies have been distributed. Also, there is an added amendment to the outstanding business list. There's a new due date for item P, redevelopment of city-owned surface parking lot, and the new due date is April 5th, 2016.
And I'm going to turn to Councillor Farr. I'm sure that addressed your question, correct? No? Okay, Councillor Farr.
I'm very happy to hear that. I had sent that email a few days ago. No, right off the top, you had mentioned about the doors and our current protocol based on, I guess it's not really at the point yet where they're working effectively. They're working well, but obviously if we stand too close, they open, so we're locking them during meetings. So maybe at the general information portion of the agenda, our CBO at Vanderwind can give us an update as to what we can expect when these things are working the way they were meant to work, and how much longer will we have to keep locking them during these committee meetings. If he can provide that at the end of the agenda.
We can certainly ask Mr. Vanderwind, but I don't believe it's a matter that they're not working properly. I think the issue is that it's disruptive. So it's not that they're not working properly, they are,
yeah,
that it's disruptive.
I corrected myself. They are working properly, but wouldn't the point be, given the nature of the way they're, what they're supposed to be doing, that we don't have to lock them every committee meeting and council meeting? Wouldn't it be prudent to get an update on the way they're supposed to work? I can't see us making this investment on accessibility, and basically that's what we have here. And it's a pretty significant investment I don't ever remember the caveat when we talked about doing this among many other projects that are yet to come with respect to accessibility and talking about keeping them locked during committee and council meetings. So I'm sure that we're working to fix it. I wouldn't mind an update for the record.
How about Mr. Vanderbilt? We'll deal with it under new business, so we'll get the agenda going now. Thank you, Councillor. So may I have a motion now to approve the agenda as amended? Moved by Councillor Green, second by Councillor Partridge. All in favour? Are there any declarations of interest this morning? Seeing none. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting held December the 1st, 2015. The minutes, sorry, and then there were minutes of December, I'm sorry, Ida, there's 2 days here. December 3rd, it was a special planning committee meeting, December 3rd, 2015, moved by Councillor Aidan Johnson, second by Councillor Doug Connolly. All in favor? Thank you, everyone. So we dealt with the, we'll go on to the delegation request. So we had Graham Tosh wishing to address committee respecting item 8.1. The clerk, Madam Clerk, has indicated that this has been, he has requested to come before us on the February 2nd meeting. Can I have a motion to approve that delegation request for February 2nd? Councillor Green, Councillor Aidan Johnson, all in favor? Thank you. And also, Madam Clerk, do you want us to also add Mr. Whaling in there, that it also be directed to delegation request February 2nd?
Mr. Whaling was approved already to come, and it's just a matter of changing the
Date. So just so we know it's for the record that we approve, he'll be coming February 2nd. Moved by Councillor Pasuta, second by Councillor Partridge. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, everyone. So we have consent items now. We have item 5.1 is to incorporate city lands into Dartnell Road bylaw number. I don't have it here. But anyways, any questions or comments on that? May I have a motion to approve item 5.1, moved by Councillor Partridge. Sorry, Councillor Partridge, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just wanting to know how the ward councillor, if she's okay with this. Mr. Sergi?
Yeah. Okay. Mr. Sergi? Morning, sir.
Through the chair to the council, yes, she's well aware of it. This is just an incorporating bylaw to open the road publicly.
Okay, thank you very much for that, and I'll move it.
So Councillor Partridge is moving it, second by Councillor Matt Green. All in favor? Thank you, everyone. 5.2 is parked facing the wrong way. Question, Councillor Farr.
Thanks to our municipal law enforcement staff, Marty, and it looks like Bill Young and Gary Bishop for conducting this work, trying to get as many answers as they could from Hamilton Police Services. We didn't get a lot of detail from Hamilton Police Services, and I recall when we moved this motion, we were looking for a little bit more. That said, understanding that much of their work is done when our bylaw officers aren't out there, and this is respecting the parking facing the wrong way issue for those listening in. So through you to Marty. Marty, the report sums up pretty much, I guess you could agree or not, that 90% of the tickets we issue are the result of complaints, and that's in the study period, which was a little over a year, I guess. Roughly 1,100 tickets are complaint-based, but that doesn't mean 1,100 individual incidences, because when you enforce, if you get one facing the wrong way on any block, you enforce the whole block when you're being reactive. Is that true?
Through Madam Chair, yes, that's correct.
Okay. And this report, finally, through you, Madam Chair, is basically status quo, right? Henceforth?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you again for the effort, and I'll be happy to move this.
Thank you, Councillor. So any other questions on item 5.2? Councillor Connolly. This is the parking facing the wrong way. Councillor Connolly.
Thank you. This is not the one for parking on the boulevards, that's another one. Okay. So the police enforce it when they want to, and we enforce it when we're asked to. Is that right? And the police department will not adopt the same policy, complaint-based enforcement only. So they don't want to adopt that, they want to keep it the way it is that right?
So through Madam Chair, city staff enforce facing the wrong way on local residential streets upon complaint. We do it proactively without a complaint when it's possibly could cause a safety hazard on a main roadway crossing a yellow line. The police generally enforce it upon complaint when city staff is not working, or proactively whenever they deem necessary.
And that's not changing?
The police have advised that they will not change their policy.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Just want clarification.
I have Councillor Green, then Councillor Partridge.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm wondering if through you to staff, if you can just kind of give a bit of a background. I know this is a bugaboo for residents in our neighborhood. They get, one person will complain, staff will go out and they ticket absolutely everybody. And then the perception on the street is that we're proactive now. And, on residential, quiet, Sleepy Hollow streets, they don't see the big deal. And so I'm wondering if maybe there could be a comment as to how this came to be, why we're dealing with this now and how, basically some of the background on it so that people who have been asking these questions, I can point to them to say, this is what has preempted this conversation.
Madam Chair, you're correct. We do have a complaint-based approach. We do get a complaint about one particular vehicle, but it's our long-standing practice to usually go block face to block face. So if there's 3 other violations in the same block, we would tag it. The reason that this report became an issue is because the police proactively were going to some neighborhoods overnight and just out of the blue tagging on streets wherever they deemed necessary. There seemed to be no rhyme or reason to it. We had a lot of discussions with the police. We talked about the problems they were creating, and former Deputy Chief Leanhurst talked to his staff and explained to them that you're not really changing behaviors if out of the blue you're just going into a particular street for no reason. So for the most part, the police, we haven't heard of any occurrences recently where they're going in overnight and doing it. So I hope that problem has gone away. So for the most part, this does work until the police decide to go into neighborhoods and cause some problems.
Thank you. That gives, real good insight, I know, at least for the people who wake up pretty angry and upset that they've been doing it this way for 20 years. What's the big deal? But I think it's important, Madam Chair, for the public, it's worth noting that we don't control the Highway Traffic Act and we don't control the laws as it pertains to roads. Is that correct? Is that fair to say?
Madam Chair, yes, this is a violation for facing the wrong way, and we do not control the Highway Traffic Act.
And would it also be safe to say that that's probably the reason why the police are going to continue to do what they do, because they're not under our jurisdiction in that regard, and that we have our bylaws, but they are guided by the Highway Traffic Act as it pertains to roads and cities?
Madam Chair, as long as our bylaws on the books in accordance with the Act, the police advise that they will enforce.
So then I guess through you, that does raise the question then, if we did change the bylaw, would the police still, because my issue around safety, Madam Chair, was that if you're parked facing the wrong way, then you automatically enter into traffic facing the wrong way, which is where you have blind spots and other things that might occur. And so not as to belabor this, but just to create clarity for people who've been dinged with these tickets, could you just provide some clarity as to the difference between our bylaw as it relates to parking and the police's obligation as it relates to safety in the same issue?
So through Madam Chair, I wouldn't recommend it, but we rescind this portion of our bylaw, so it wouldn't be on the books, and the police would have to deem the violation, the vehicle be parked in some sort of manner which is creating a safety hazard, and enforce it under another type of violation, possibly under the Act.
Yeah, that is, Madam Claire, that is what I was trying to get to, is that at the end of the day, there is a law particular to traffic that is a law and not just a bylaw. So what we're doing is trying to create clarity as to the bylaw, why it is important to face traffic in the direction that it's meant to face, and hopefully inform the public. I had to change my own habits when I was driving way back when, because I know in my neighborhood, my street got tagged with it, and you get the ticket once, and hopefully that's enough deterrence to not do it again. But yeah, I do appreciate that we had an opportunity to create some clarity on that, and people do understand that it's not a cash grab. We're not going out to try to, take money from the general public in this regard, that it is rooted in a bit of safety. And we, to our best ability, if we can just have this clarified, we're using our best discretion where appropriate. Is that correct, Madam Chair, through you to Mr. Hazel?
Madam Chair, yes, it's been long-standing practice in Hamilton to not enforce it proactively, because if we did that, other problems can be created. People turn around in people's driveways, they block circle to face the right way. So because of the sort of parking culture in Hamilton, we do not enforce it proactively.
Parking culture. And that'll probably be a good segue into boulevards and front lawns. The parking culture, I appreciate. We have communities of, but that's another topic, so I'll wait for that, Madam Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Partridge.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and that's another report. We'll get to that one, don't worry. No, and I appreciate the questions by the previous councillor around the Traffic Act, because that's where my questions were. But Marty, can you just clarify for me, please? Did we not approve a report that had our MLE hours extended so that they could work with police during the night? I seem to remember something about that. Can you just give me some more background on that, please?
So through Madam Chair, yes, you're correct. We did extend MLA hours for noise enforcement only. Our parking enforcement officers generally work 3 shifts. They work overnight except Saturday nights and Sundays. So there are some times when the police will have to enforce some parking complaints.
Okay, thank you. But from what I'm hearing, it's restricted mostly to the off hours of our own MLE folks, and which would be mostly weekends. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So now may I have a motion to approve the report as received? Moved by Councillor Aidan Johnson, second by Councillor Doug Connolly. All in favor? Thank you, everyone. Now I'm going to go on to item 6.2. So item 6.2 is an application for Urban Hamilton Official Plan and Zoning Bylaw Amendment for lands located at 20 Art Frank Drive, Stony Creek, Ward 9. And I just have to read this out. Members of the public, in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act, please be advised that if a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Council of the City of Hamilton before Council makes a decision regarding the Urban Hamilton Official Plan and Zoning Bylaw amendments, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Council of the City of Hamilton to the Ontario Municipal Board, and the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Municipal Board unless, in the opinion of the Board, there are reasonable grounds to do so. I'm also going to ask that we have, under item 6.2, we have 6.2 bracket 1 and 6.2 bracket 2 are correspondence items that we need to receive as well. And the first one is from Marius Gotarski at 32 Hopewell Crescent, Stony Creek, and the other is concerned residents. May I have a motion to receive these 2 items of correspondence? Councillor Partridge, Councillor Green, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. I guess I'm going to read off. Are there any members of the public wishing to address this committee this morning? Any members wishing to come down and address this committee this morning? I'll say it one more time because I have to say it 3 times. Anyone wishing to address the committee this morning on this item? Seeing none, thank you. We'll close off to the floor. So may I have, does committee, Councillor Connolly, do you wish the staff presentation?
Actually, I'd like to hear the...
I appreciate that, Councillor, and you're aware, as I am, that there are some residents here on this item, but they didn't indicate that they want to speak, so that's fine. So I'm going to ask in Alvin, if you'd like to come down and give the staff presentation. Thank you. Mr. Chan.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee, fellow staff, and public. Before you today are applications to amend the Urban Hamilton Official Plan and the Stony Creek zoning bylaw for lands located at 20 Art Frank Drive. The subject lands are located east of Upper Mount Albion, over here, north of Art Frank Drive, south of Mud Street, and west of Winterberry Drive. The property has both frontage on Art Frank and Winterberry Drive and total approximately 1.89 hectares in area. The applicant proposes 22-story townhouses with the option of live-work units located along the frontage of Art Frank Drive here, along with 3 additional towers totaling 351 dwelling units within. So these are the 3 towers proposed with a total of 351 units. And as a total in terms of development, 370 dwelling units will be provided on site. The density is approximately 197 units per hectare in terms of its proposal, with 648 parking spaces, 500 of which will be underground parking spaces, and the remaining 148 on the surface interior to the property. There will be 2 access driveways onto Art Frank Drive, and one central, and one to the east. Both these axes will be subject to further detailed review in terms of sight lines, at the future site plan control stage. The purpose and effect of the Urban Hamilton Official Plan Amendment is for a further amendment to the existing area-specific policy Area A, in particular Block A1, which governs this particular property. This is to permit an increase of density to a maximum of 200 units per hectare and an additional maximum height of 12 stories for a multiple dwelling proposed to be constructed parallel to the existing stormwater management pond identified as Building B on this concept plan. So the central tower here actually abuts a stormwater management pond to the rear. This is the only building that we subject to the amendment for a 12-story height increase. The remaining 2 towers meet the criteria in terms of urban design and official plan policies, allowing up to 8 stories on these 2 buildings. In addition, through the urban design study, stepping of the buildings will be incorporated to allow for better sun shadow. So you'll see here, there's various steppings of the building heights until we get to the highest point. This will be, again, subject to further detailed review through the site plan control application. The purpose of the zoning bylaw amendment application is to amend the existing multiple residential RM3-27H zone modified by deleting and replacing the site-specific modifications regarding the following bylaw elements: permitted uses, definitions, maximum east and south yards, side yard setbacks for townhouses and for apartment buildings, the minimum rear yard for an apartment building, the permitted maximum density, the permitted maximum building heights, privacy areas, minimum landscape open space, minimum required parking space dimensions, location of parking spaces with dwellings on the same lot, and the removal of the requirement for live-work units immediately east of the lands zone mixed-use commercial MUC1. So previously, these particular units were obligated to be live-work units under the previous approvals. In review of the official plan asks for the permission of live-work units, but does not obligate the actual development of live-work units. Accordingly, this modification has also been proposed. The minimum special setback to a daylight triangle has also been requested for modification, along with increased porch encroachments. This is due to the unique curvature of both Art Frank and Winterberry, and the daylight triangle at the intersection results in these particular modifications. Staff have reviewed the requested modifications and are in support of the proposed amending bylaw, as it will provide for a development that is compatible with the existing land uses in the immediate area and represents good planning by, among other things, providing for development of a complete community, enhancing and continuing the streetscape within the neighborhood, while making efficient use of a vacant parcel of land and existing infrastructure within the urban boundary. To date, 2 public submissions were received, in addition to the correspondence you received today, one of which represented 4 landowners, identifying concerns regarding traffic, height, the associated privacy overview impacts, noise, fragmented development, property values, and the future redevelopment of their individual properties, along with the potential construction impacts. So that's the site there, just to provide some context. These are single detached dwellings along Upper Mount Albion, the existing power center to the south as well as to the west. This is a view of the subject lands from Art Frank Drive north. This is a view along Art Frank Drive. That's the existing commercial development again to the south. A view west towards the power center as well. So this is a view from the intersection of Upper Mount Albion and Art Frank Drive into the site. Again, you can see the existing single detached residential there. This is a view of the existing rear of the residences on Upper Mount Albion. This was the primary area of concern from the public submissions. And finally, a northeast view of the site again towards Winterberry Drive from Art Frank. And lastly, just a view of the existing singles along Upper Mount Albion. In review of the concerns regarding potential traffic and safety as a result of the development, staff noted a traffic impact study was submitted as part of this application as well as through previous development applications and was deemed satisfactory, save and except for the potential westerly driveway location, which again is to be further analyzed through the future site plan control application for safe sight lines. With respect to building height and associated privacy overview issues, as mentioned earlier, the official plan allows for up to 8 stories in terms of height, provided the urban design criteria have been met. Submitted urban design studies have demonstrated conformity requirements, save and except for, again, the central tower. So just go back to the concept. Again, the central tower, which is 12 stories, which requires an amendment to allow for the increase from 8 to 12 accordingly. In review, again, including the urban design review demonstrating minimal shadow impacts on adjacent residential development through to the west, the incorporation of stepping of building heights with the larger building mass have been located central to the site, backing onto the stormwater management pond, minimizing any privacy and overview issues. So again, the tower that is to be increased backs onto a storm pond, which would have less impact on adjacent development. Lastly, of note, these adjacent lands, which again are the residences on Upper Mount Albion, are zoned as a multiple residential RM4-5H modified holding zone. This allows for the future redevelopment of these lands to permit a multiple dwelling, so similarly an apartment building, of up to 25 meters in height, being approximately 6 stories. This in turn would be consistent and complementary to the 7-story multiple dwelling proposed adjacent to the existing single detached dwellings on Upper Mount Albion. So again, what that would include is this particular 7-story, upon the future redevelopment of the singles along Upper Mount Albion, would have a 7 to 6-story interface. With respect to noise, public concerns were raised regarding noise from the existing adjacent commercial development and those incurred by the proposal and its construction. Staff note that the existing commercial developments do not form part of the subject application and were subject to previous noise requirements through their development. And that would be, again, the commercial development to the west. With respect to potential noise due to construction of the proposed development, the development will be subject to standard municipal regulations governing noise and vibration for construction, and any exceedances would be subject to the enforcement in a normal manner. With respect to loading, you can see that the loading facility has been centralized into the site, and therefore the proposed dwellings, the apartments, will provide screening of the sound of any loading during hours. With respect to fragmented development, the proposed development implements the vision of the West Mountain Heritage Green Secondary Plan. Of further note, the area was planned comprehensively previously through the adoption of the secondary plan and as per City of Hamilton zoning bylaw number 06164 and identified the lands identified by the public along Upper Mount Albion have already been rezoned for future development. Again, that's referring to the existing singles that were planned comprehensively. As the redevelopment of any of the private lands until such time as the owners are ready for the redevelopment will therefore have a transition period. So yes, there is a time where the singles will remain while larger development occurs. With respect to property values, staff are not aware of any supporting information or documentation that would substantiate this concern or any empirical data with respect to property devaluation. Lastly, concerns were also raised with respect to the redevelopment of individual properties and the sale. Staff note that these lands, again, those along Upper Mount Albion, do not form part of the applications, and the future disposition of these lands are not pertinent to the application. Notwithstanding, land assembly would be subject to potential future developers pursuing redevelopment of these lands in the normal manner. However, staff note that the existing residences would also be deemed legal non-conforming residential use, which would not preclude the individuals from selling their current holdings as a legal non-conforming single detached residential dwelling. Staff are therefore satisfied that the above concerns have been appropriately addressed and according to the proposed official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment have merit and can be supported since the proposal is consistent with the provincial policy statement 2014, conforms to the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, places to grow, and complies with the Urban Hamilton official plan subject to the recommended amendments. that concludes my presentation. Be more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chan. And are there any questions to staff? Councillor Connolly.
In the report, you talk about, through the chair, Elvin, you talk about the townhouses being two-story mixed-use townhouses. In the map I got, it says three-story. What is it going to be, two-story or three-story townhouses?
Through Madam Chair, I believe it is going to be 3 stories in the end.
3?
I believe so,
It
yes.
says in the report at least 8 times it's going to be two-story. First I saw it 3 stories when I saw the map a week ago.
So the maximum building height for the townhouses is 3 stories or 13.5 meters. So it depends on the building design. It could still be a 2-story with pitch. We don't have the design of the units at this time, but to afford a bit of flexibility, we implemented 3 stories or 13 and a half.
I'd rather see 2, but only because on the front street and you got these big high buildings, it just closes everything in. But it's very inconsistent on the report. I can show you at least 6 or 7 places that says 2-story. So if I read the report without looking at the map, I would think it would be 2-story, and I'd be asking questions when it's too late. If it's 3-story, on the executive summary and on the historical background, please say 3 stories if it's going to be.
Through
Give mixed messages.
Through you, Madam Chair, I believe the original proposal had 2, but to incorporate flexibility, it became a 3-story. And I do acknowledge the error.
Very inconsistent. So you're saying it will be up to 3 stories?
Up to 3 stories or 13.5 meters. It depends on the design of the unit.
Okay, next question would be, if I can find it. I know it has nothing to, in the report on page 7, it talks about planned transit node. There's not a transit node there now. How do you enforce a planned transit node? It's just in the report, but it'll probably never happen. I hope it does, but how do we make sure? I've been trying to get a node there, not there, but in Upper Stony Creek for a while now, so that the buses meet someplace so we can take advantage of the different areas they go to. And I know transit nodes aren't your responsibility, but you refer to it in the report. So what is the plan for a transit node?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, there was a planned transit node in this area for the power center, and that's what I was referring to in terms of the report. It's in proximity to that planned transit node. As to its implementation and its timing, I would have to defer to Hamilton Street Rail.
It's not a node, it's just bus stop, mostly for people going to Mohawk College. That's the local one.
Yeah.
It's not to centralize the busing up there so we can transfer from one to the other. That's what a node, I think, would be.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, a node was identified on the secondary plan, and that's what I'm referring to. So there is in terms of the city's vision, there is an intended node to be at this location. Whether or not it's physically there at this time.
Be there once the development is done. There would be a proper node, a connection there. Is that what you're saying? Or we're going to be fighting this 10 years from now trying to get that in there, even though you're suggesting.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, I'd have to defer to Hamilton Street Railway for that, and unfortunately they're not here. In terms of their submitted comments, just trying to find that for you. See if they did comment.
Well, it refers to it on page 7 at the bottom, just a planned transit node and will provide for a complete community through a compact design.
So again, through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, a node was identified on the secondary plan at that location. As to, its implementation and its design, that would be up to Hamilton Street Railway. And unfortunately, they did not comment on this application, so I cannot
That's
provide.
my problem, though. In this report, you say there's going to be one, but we haven't coordinated with the HSR, so things will be done in an orderly fashion. We're hoping now and supposing and guessing that there I don't think that's the way to do things, that you refer to the HSR, but they've never given you a report for it.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, all applications are circulated to Hamilton Street Railway for their comment. They did not identify any concerns with this particular proposed development. Again, a planned transit node is identified for the area, but I would have to defer to Hamilton Street Railway with respect to its
Can we follow that up,
implementation.
please?
Of course.
Yeah, thank you. Next one. On page 10, you say there's no adverse shadow impacts created on the existing residential, but you said there's minor shadow impacts on it when you did your report just now. What's the situation there?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, there's obviously always a bit of shadow impact, but what we've done, again, with the stepping is to eliminate the glare onto the existing units on Upper Mount Albion. Again, also the larger of the two has been sited adjacent to the storm pond to ensure that there is no impacts as a result.
The only impact would be on the houses that are on the west side.
On the west side, correct.
I doubt you get shadows from a building 100 feet away. But
There
I'm
is-
talking about the building on the west side.
On the west side, correct.
And the houses.
So the staff have incorporated a significant setback to the existing rear yards of the single detached dwellings along Upper Mount Albion. And again, I would point to the fact that those lands are zoned to be redeveloped for a future 6-story apartment dwelling, which would provide the complementary transition. There's obviously,
Which isn't happening. We got 10 or 12 houses there. You can say you're zoned for whatever you want, but right now, the impact is on those 12, I think there's 12 houses along there. I could be wrong on that number. So the shadows are for those are affecting those people.
through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, yes. And again, urban design studies were submitted and reviewed by our staff and deemed satisfactory in addressing that concern. There was a test to achieve the 8 stories, and they met the requirements of the official plan for that particular test. They are actually only going up to 7 stories.
Sorry, I should be going through you each time, but, so you're saying the minimal impact of the shadows aren't a concern?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, that was the advice of our urban design staff in review of the submitted reports and sun shadow study. That with the appropriate stepping, which will be further detailed through site plan design, will ensure that.
Oh. Okay, between the fence, between the houses and the property, is there going to be a privacy fence put along there?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, speaking with the agent, he indicated to me, yes, a fence will be placed along that property line.
And does that have to be put in a report or somewhere indicated rather than just he tells me so?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, the application is subject to a future site plan control application, which staff can ensure that that is completed.
Thank you. And almost finished. Thanks for your patience. Yeah. The biggest problem I think I have with this thing is the driveways. Apparently, we're going to have one driveway for in and out on the easterly end of Art Frank, but on the westerly end of Art Frank, it's just going to be in. Is that what the proposal is?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, currently the concept shows that. Again, as mentioned in my report, the detailed design of the accesses are to be reviewed through the site plan application.
We're going to have probably over 500 to 600 cars in that property. Not all coming out at the same time, I realize that. But there's a significant load going on to Art Frank. You know, and the exits are very limited to Winterberry or Stone Church, I guess. And I think there's going to be a lot of traffic jams there. I think it's going to be horrendous getting in and out of there.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor. So again, traffic studies were submitted for the original comprehensive development as well as through this application were deemed satisfactory by traffic staff. Notwithstanding, I did speak with traffic staff this morning, and there is a possibility through the site plan to ask for an addendum as a confirmatory through the future site plan application should the applicant be accepting of this change.
Was the traffic study done recently, or was that done in 2000? Was that done in 2006? A lot of things have changed, and
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, I don't have a physical copy of the study with me, so I can't tell you the exact date of the study, but it is within the allotted timeline of its validity by traffic engineering. They have a certain validity in terms of the number of years that study is acceptable and was reviewed as such and deemed acceptable by staff.
well, I don't deem it acceptable, to tell you the truth. First of all, I haven't seen it. It wasn't in the report. The traffic study wasn't in the report. And secondly, if it was done in 2006, which I think it was, but we have over 1,000 more houses up there since then. And so the effect of doing something in 2006 really does not show today's, you know, when you see Lasani building all the houses and Winterberry and Highland Road doing all the houses, I need to know. Traffic is bad up there right now. Infrastructure up there is not good. The 4-lane highway, the 4-lane bypass is going to help some. But there has to be a limit to more infrastructure in there.
So-
And I don't mean houses, I mean roads.
Yep, I understand. Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor. So the 2006 study that you're referring to was the original adopting comprehensive study. Through this application, again, there was a updated study submitted with the access review that did include traffic volumes and counts, which were reviewed by our traffic staff, and they are of the opinion sufficient capacity and infrastructure is available for this development, and that's why it was.
Again, when I was talking to the consultants, they said it wasn't, and they're willing to do one or get it done. So I would like to be sure that another traffic study is going to be done, updated to today's situation, not a few years ago.
And through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, that's what I was referring to earlier in discussion with traffic staff. They have no issue with reviewing an addendum, but that would be at the bequest of the applicant to agree to do such.
Okay. I wasn't aware that Winterberry is going to have bicycle lanes. Are you talking about Winterberry between Mud Street and Stone Chair?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, no, abutting this property, and they're actually already installed out there.
Are they?
Yes, when I went out on site in discussion with Mr. White.
Seen them. Okay, thank you. That's a win, Jim. Don't know what that one was, so I'll leave it. I've only got 2 or 3 more tags. I'm sorry to keep you, but this is the only time I'm going to have to. You say it's 28, it's comparable with existing development in the immediate area. What existing development is comparable to 250 homes?
Well, through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, so it's to offer a bigger range of housing types and opportunities based on what's out there, being a power center in location to a major thoroughfare, the expressways and local roadway or major arterials. It's ideal for that kind of development, and those forms of higher density built forms are consistently found in proximity to those roadways and adjacent to local commercial power centers and retail for the shopping public.
One more, I think, and I'm going to have it. The last one was traffic impact study. A traffic impact study, is that the same as a traffic?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, that is.
It is?
Yes.
Okay. And when they're building this new complex, it's on rock, I guess, slate, isn't it? Sedimentary rock?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, I'm not aware of the stratification of the soil, but yeah, in general, yes.
Oh,
This particular site I can't speak to, but in general.
And will they be doing blasting there, further underneath parking and all that?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, none has been identified through this proposal, but would be subject to the regulations through the future site plan control application if that were incurred.
Because if they're going to do blasting, especially on the one.
Sorry, councillor, microphone. Only because
Thank you.
this is recorded.
I know, thank you. If they're going to do blasting, I think those homes have to be made sure that there's no effect from the blasting. So would there be
Through you, Madam.
surveys done of the homes before blasting is done?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, there is a protocol in place for blasting, and any development would be subject to that protocol, the city's protocol. Again, none has been identified at this time, to my knowledge.
But if there is blasting,
There is a
homes will be identified looked at to make sure
So-
there's no cracks, and if there's cracks afterward, all this kind of stuff.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, it would be subject to the future site plan control application where a condition would be imposed if blasting were occurred to follow the proper city protocols
Is
and
that
procedures.
automatic, or is that something we have to make sure? If they're doing blastings automatically, they're going to check the houses around there? Or is it something that we have to be on top of to make sure they do it?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, I don't know the specifics of the policy and the procedure for blasting, but there is, I'm sure, assessment done through that particular protocol.
I'm just going to step in because Mr. Sergi indicated that he can answer that question.
Oh, great. Tony, could you answer that for me?
Through the chair to the councillor, typically when blasting is required to facilitate the excavation, they will circulate based on the distance separation, a pre-construction analysis of the property. So they'll ask the people to get access. Should they grant access, they'll go in there and do an inspection. So they have a visual and record of what was existing prior to construction.
Great. Thank you very much. And that's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Any other questions from committee? I just have one question, Alvin, if I can. The building on the west side, you say the lands, the homes abutting that are on Mount Albion are all zoned multi-units, is that correct? But they're legal non-conforming.
Through you, to you, Madam Chair.
I'll give the chair to Mr. Aidan Johnson, Councillor Johnson.
Please, go ahead.
Through the chair to Councillor Pearson. The lands along Upper Mount Albion are zoned for multiple residential apartment building in the future, again, 6 stories or up to 24 meters in height.
Up to 24 meters, so, okay, that's fine. Thank you very much for that. Okay?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Councillor Partridge had indicated.
Councillor Partridge, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Alvin, good presentation, thank you. And question for you, anywhere in this development, is there any green space or parkette being accommodated?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, there is a central green space area. It includes the gazebo that you see here, working around the proposed underground access. There are significant yards to the rear of the apartment buildings. There's a bit of yard space there as well for those particular developments. With respect to the ones on Art Frank, the design principles request that the units be brought forward to the street for streetscape purposes, which minimizes the opportunity for obviously front yard landscaping. But where feasible, we have incorporated sufficient yards and open space for the residents and potential commercial operations.
Okay, thank you, Alvin. And through you, Madam Chair, you mentioned the blocks will be brought forward which won't allow for that much streetscape. But what kind of plantings for privacy are going to be included, and where are they going to be located?
So through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, as mentioned earlier, the agent had identified a fence will be provided for those along Upper Mount Albion. With respect to the balance of the site, it will be subject to a future site plan control application where a landscape plan detailing the particular species and its location will be incorporated and implemented.
Okay, thank you. And through you, Madam Chair, I would also suggest that the councillor for the area be included in the site plan development and work along on some of the issues that he has raised, which are good issues. Thank you. Those are my comments.
Thank you, councillor. Councillor Farr.
Great presentation. Did you say something that since the report was filed, there may be a means in which to address traffic flow? I thought I heard something in your presentation, and I didn't quite catch it through you.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, the ward councillor had identified this concern a few days earlier. In so doing, I had approached corridor management staff with respect to the existing studies submitted and their findings. Again, staff was satisfied with the findings of those studies. However, they have advised that should the councillor wish to include a requirement for further addendum, that they would be obviously in a position to review that and provide insight on that through the future site plan control application. The reason they mentioned that was, as I mentioned earlier, the driveway accesses are subject to a traffic sightline review, and it's their position that that particular study could be beefed up, so to speak, to include a volume assessment as well.
Thank you, everyone. Seeing no further questions, may I have a motion to receive the staff presentation? Moved by Councillor Connolly, second by Councillor Partridge. Favor? Carried. Thank you. And then I have James Webb of Webb Planning Consultants, the agent for the owner in attendance. And you, I understand, Mr. Webb, want to make a PowerPoint presentation or just presentation? Okay, come on down.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of committee, ladies and gentlemen. For the record, James Webb, planning consultant, speaking to you today on behalf of the proponents. My presentation will be brief. Obviously, we've been working with planning staff for a significant period of time. I'm not going to repeat what Alvin's provided in his excellent presentation, but please understand that we're in full agreement with the recommendations that are before you today to grant approvals to the planning instruments. I do believe that, in the context of this site, it is very important in making today's decision that there is awareness of the significant background to this project and the length of planning expertise that's been done in terms of the visioning of this area. Residential had always been intended to develop on this piece of land since the initial approvals were granted in 2006. The slide that's up on the screen for you now shows what we refer to as the broader, essentially the landownings of the Heritage Group. Heritage Green, the property that we're speaking about today, is located in the upper right-hand corner. And essentially, it's the original planning approvals from 2006 encompassed all of these lands here, essentially from Stone Church and Paramount North up to the Lincoln-Alexander Parkway. It included all the big box commercial developments here, the entertainment uses here, the office building that's since been opened. You see at the north limit a swim pond that I'll come back to. And the site that we're speaking to you about today is this parcel in here that had always been anticipated since the outset for residential development. And I think what's really important, I wasn't involved in the 2006 approvals, but one of the fundamental principles as to why there was approvals granted to this amount of commercial development is that the area was envisioned to develop as a mixed-use area. Yes, there was existing lower density residential outside the periphery of the area, but the area, this specific area, was meant to include residential development. So key fundamental principle to do mixed use. And more importantly, it was meant to bring forward additional housing choices so that the neighborhood, the broader Upper Stony Creek neighborhood, would have that full and complete continuum of housing choices. We have the existing low-density detached housing, we have a lot of medium-density housing, but this area here was meant to complete the continuum and provide that medium and higher density housing choices. Yes. As I said, the planning approvals initially were granted in 2006. I apologize for the quality of the graphic, but this is actually a page out of that staff report from 2006. And I just want to draw your attention to a couple of key elements here. The subject lands that are before you today are, at the time, were represented as that parcel there. So they were always intended to develop as a standalone residential project. We've also heard some discussion about the Upper Mount Albion properties. There are, while they were included in the overall planning exercise, they remained under private ownership, individual residential properties. And they represent all of these parcels up on the east side of Upper Mount Albion Road. But the key that I want to bring to your attention, it had always been anticipated that those two parcels, the lands before you today and those Upper Mount Albion pieces, would develop separately. There was never an intent for consolidation laterally. The intent for consolidation here was that those pieces would merge title and ultimately develop independent of our lands. And so the matter that's before you today is in fact implementing what was the original and consistent in terms of the intent for the lands. Alvin's provided you with a very good and comprehensive explanation of the proposal. This is the final site plan. I can tell you that we've gone through a number of iterations. We began with a number of low squat buildings and agreed immediately that it wasn't a good addition to the neighborhood in terms of its urban design. We looked at various options. We looked at what was already permitted in the secondary plan in terms of the heights. And at the end, through working with city staff, we've come up with what we believe is a very innovative, it's an interesting, and will add certainly good and high quality architectural elements into this neighborhood. And these are two renderings that have been done of the project that provide you a very good illustration of how through the incorporation of stepping techniques, we're able to bring buildings into the neighborhood that have heights that match the lower heights along Art Frank Drive, and stepping towards taller heights. The Century building is proposed at 12 meters of height, 12 stories of height. But it was agreed that that was an okay adjustment to its height because it's abutted on the north side by a stormwater management pond, and there's no adjoining existing development immediately to the south. I think what I'd like to do at this point, Madam Chair, is perhaps just respond. Alvin's provided you a very good presentation in terms of the urban design issues and our fit and compatibility with the full and complete urban design policy framework. We have done all of our necessary studies in terms of sun shadow impacts. We're in agreement with staff that any impacts that there are very minor. If I may, I would like to address some of the comments that I did hear as I was sitting in the gallery. Firstly, with respect to concerns of the residents, absolutely, there is an obligation on this development to provide a fence up the full mutual boundary line where we back onto that existing development. In fact, it's a condition in the original subdivision agreement. So at the appropriate time, we will be implementing that fence at the developer's cost. There was commentary with regards to land assembly. I believe I provided the explanation for that. There is no intent that those adjoining Upper Mount Albion lands would ever be merged in title. So for that reason, the development of this parcel can proceed independent of those lands. On the issue of traffic, the original Heritage Green development, in fact, implemented the majority of the traffic improvements that are there today. And we believe that they're functioning properly, and staff agree that they are functioning appropriately. That being said, recognizing the concerns that are being raised, we are in agreement to undertake an update to that 2006 study. It was done by the Heritage Green developers, so absolutely we're in agreement that we will do that as a condition of the site plan approval. And anything that may come out of that study, whether it be traffic signal optimization, those are things that we can implement at that phase. Transit hub. Bit of a point of contention for the developers as well, because when the original development for Heritage Green was approved, there was considerable effort put towards making this area transit supportive. The developers were required to implement significant infrastructure to accommodate that. On Upper Mount Albion Road, you can see there's a number of very large laybys. That's been designed for buses. This was meant to be the focal point, the node, because I believe we have 3 different bus services that all come by. And that's the problem. They still come by. They're not coming in. We have buses that pass us by on Paramount and buses that come down Winterberry, but nobody has yet implemented what is the ultimate strategy. So the infrastructure is in place. We have built all those necessary stops and provided those gathering places off-street in accordance with city design guidelines. It's something we'd be happy to work with the council because it certainly is to the benefit of the development, improving transit accessibility. And lastly, if I may, Councillor, in response to some of the comments with respect to implementation and construction issues, we are required to go through the site plan approvals process, and a condition that we've been seeing being implemented at that phase on a regular basis is construction management plans. So we'll know more as we get to the final conditional site plan approval, but that provides us a framework, a document that we can then use to make sure that we can implement all of those very requirements that you mentioned. I don't believe that blasting is required here. We're far enough away from the air marks of karst, but obviously when we start to do our detailed soil studies, we'll have a better understanding of construction impacts. And with that, Madam Chairman, I think I'll conclude my presentation. I'd be pleased to answer any questions that I could.
And I'm going to turn to Councillor Connolly. I don't know if you had any questions. Can I just ask, because there was one, and maybe through Councillor Connolly may wish to ask, is the height of the townhouses fronting Paramount? Art Frank, sorry, Art Frank.
The planning instruments before you today do allow for 3 stories of height. There is flexibility in terms of what the final built form may be. They may be live-work units. They may be traditional rear lane townhouses. They're not going to have driveways on to Art Frank Drive. They're essentially backloaded, but the planning instrument before you does give us flexibility in terms of the ultimate height, but there is a measured cap at 13.5 meters.
Just wanted to be sure that was in the record, and Councillor Connolly's question was answered as best as possible. Thank you. So any questions of the presenter here? Seeing none, can I have a motion then? Thank you, Mr. Webb. May I have a motion to receive the presentation? Moved by Councillor Connolly, second by Councillor Eden-Johnson. All in favour? Thank you, everyone. And I just checked with Madam Clerk. We did do the public meeting portion, but I didn't have a motion to close off the public meeting. So for the record, motion to close off the public meeting, moved by Councillor Connolly, second by Councillor Eden-Johnson. All in favour? Carried. And now may I have a motion regarding the staff report? Councillor Connolly, did you wish to move the staff report? Thank you. Moved by Councillor Connolly, second by Councillor Eden-Johnson. All in favour? Carried. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to move on now to 6.3 is the application for approval of draft plan of condominium, common element by Webb Planning Consultants, Inc. on behalf of Losani Homes Limited for lands known as 247 Festival Way, Ward 11. Again, I'm going to go through the process. Members of the public, in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act, please be advised that if a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Council of the City of Hamilton before Council makes a decision regarding the draft plan of condominium, common element, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Council of the City of Hamilton to the Ontario Municipal Board, and the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Municipal Board unless, in the opinion of the Board, there are reasonable grounds to do so. Are there any members of the public wishing to speak to this issue today? Is there anyone here in the audience on this particular item on 247 Festival Way? I'll say it 3 times. Is there anyone here on 247 Festival Way? 3rd time. Anyone here on 247 Festival Way? Seeing none, may I have a motion to close the public meeting? Councillor Pasuta, Councillor Partridge, all in favour? Thank you. Seeing that there's no one here, can we have a motion then to, the ward councillor's not here, so maybe I'd just like to turn to staff. Mr. Chan, can I ask through to Mr. Chan, is the ward councillor, I'm sorry, I didn't turn my page on that one. Madeline, good morning, Madeline. Is there anyone here, or Anita, is there anyone here, any issues, or the ward councillor in support of this recommendation?
Through the chair to the councillor, yes, the ward councillor has not identified any concerns and is in support of the application.
Thank you. Okay then, so can I have a motion now to waive the staff presentation? Moved by Councillor Partridge, second by Councillor Green. All in favour? Carried. And Mr. Webb, as the planning consultant, did you have any comments?
No submissions, Madam Chair. We're in full agreement with the recommendation.
Thank you, sir. Now, may I have a motion then regarding the staff report? Moved by Councillor Farr, second by Councillor Collins. All in favour? Thank you, everyone. Excellent. Okay, we were going to go on to, I'll read it off. Item 6.4 is the application for an urban Hamilton official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment for lands located at 101 Shoreview Place, Stony Creek. It's Ward 10. I will relinquish the chair to Councillor Eden-Johnson.
Thank you. Please go ahead, Councillor.
I think you have to come here and read this then. Makes it a little easier.
So just
Right here? Okay.
from members of the public?
Yes.
Yeah. Members of the public, in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act, please be advised that if a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Council of the City of Hamilton before Council makes a decision regarding the Urban Hamilton Official Plan and zoning bylaw amendments, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Council of the City of Hamilton to the Ontario Municipal Board, and the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Municipal Board unless, in the opinion of the Board, there are reasonable grounds to do so. May I please have a motion to receive the added correspondence from Lakewood Beach Community Council from Councillor Partridge and seconded by Councillor Green. All in favor? Oh, pardon me. Are there any members of the public wishing to address committee? Are there any members of the public wishing to address committee? A third and final time, are there any members of the public wishing to address committee? Seeing as no one has come forward, I call upon Yvette Rybensky, and please forgive my pronunciation if that pronunciation is wrong, to explain the changes to the bylaw. Councillor
Sorry, Mr.
Pearson,
Chairman,
please go
can I
ahead.
move a motion that we close off the public portion of the meeting? And I would also like, since there is no one here, that we could also waive the staff presentation.
Yes.
Okay? I'd like
so-
to move that.
Advanced by Councillor Pearson and seconded by Councillor Farr to waive the staff presentation and close the public portion. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. To waive the presentation means I don't think we need to hear from you after all. Madam Clerk, yes, is indicating?
But there is an explanation that needs to be presented to committee.
I misunderstood.
Yeah.
Pardon me.
Yeah.
I apologize. Please. Oh, we're not hearing. I will go back to Councillor Pearson for clarification.
Mr. Chairman, yes, we've closed off, which is fine, and I can turn to staff, Yvette or Anita, with regards to some issues that, but I think the applicant, the agent would also like to speak, and I think his comments will address the changes that are on the bylaw coming forward today. We should hear. So if we can hear from staff, maybe you can clarify that first.
Very good.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, Yvette.
Morning. Mr. Chair, members of Planning Committee and staff, and members of the public, the changes proposed before you for the zoning bylaw are for a few items. 3 of them are for what I would call technical amendments. They are a refinement of the plan to reduce the size of the privacy areas for the townhouses, to reduce the minimum required landscape open space for the townhouses and apartments, and to reduce the required landscape strip along the frontage of Shoreview. The other amendment would be to remove the requirement from the holding provision for the servicing component. Time has caught up with this proposal, and over the course of the summer, some of the questions with respect to the capacity of the existing servicing have been addressed, and this component is no longer required. There remains a holding provision for the environmental impact study and the transportation impact assessment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yvette. Councillor Pearson wishes to move a motion to accept the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I'd like to ask that we have the applicant's agent attend to make presentation, and he can elaborate on what Yvette has raised, and at the appropriate time, I'll move the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, do we need a motion to accept the staff report before we move on, or not? No, we do not. Fine. Sergio Mancia of Urban Solutions is of course the agent for the owner. Mr. Mancia, please come forward with your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. If you can just give me 1 second to
of course,
pull this up, and then it might make a little more sense. Madam Chairman, Mr. Chairman, my apologies. For the record, my name is Sergio Manchia from Urban Solutions. With me today is Victoria Coates and Katie Rainhall, also planners with our office, and they've been working on the file along with my client, who is Fengate Capital and LFP, Liuna, and with us is Mike Kovacevic, Mike Kolavicic, sorry for the pronunciation. Also with us was Jeff Pakin, but he couldn't make it. He's the builder on the subject lands. So, Mr. Chairman, in sum, and I'll go through this very quickly, this application before you is an amendment to an existing draft plan of subdivision that was approved back in 09-10 down on, we call it Green Millen, between Green Road and Millen Road. Fairly significant project of a minimum of 1,000 units, and we are now just fine-tuning and redefining some of the particulars. Before I get into it, I also want to thank staff for all their help on this one. It's been about a few months of going back and forth to fine-tuning the bylaw to avoid any potential variances and trying to address some of the urban design issues. So thank you to Yvette, who picked up the file somewhat midstream, and Anita and her staff, her juniors, and of course Mr. Robichaud and Mrs. Sergi, who've helped along with respect to some of these servicing issues. So, Madam Chairman, Mr. Chairman, here's the subject property that we're dealing with. Again, on the waterfront, it is a spectacular piece of property, and New Horizons is going to be the builder. As I indicated, LPF, Fengate, Liuna are the landowners. The subject land's about just under 6 acres of property, and our proposal is for about under 500, 478 units and 6 stories with some townhouses. The amendments incorporate increase in height, and like I said, the original plan that was up before committee and council years back included townhouses and some maisonette type of development. So we were redefining it, and as Councillor Pearson has indicated, we've worked diligently to deal with some of the issues. Very quickly, that's the project itself. That happens to be one of the wings within the site plan, and as indicated by Yvette and Councillor, this is going to be going through site plan process. We've already initiated the site plan submission. It will be for a development review team in the next few weeks, and I believe Anita has already delegated it down, and we're starting to receive comments with respect to some of these technical issues that we have on the table. As indicated by the councillor, there's been a great deal of liaison as far back as last year. This application has gone through some technical scrutiny, which we've accomplished and achieved, including 2 issues that I'd like to talk about briefly, which is the environmental impact statement addendum and the Ministry of Transportation permit, which is the relates to the traffic study. I do wish to bring forward again, as you're aware, our firm has been fairly active in the last year on these microsites and how we bring the information out to the public. With that, there were a total of 255 visits to the site, all dealing with the environmental impact study itself, the addendum, the technical supports that were required, minimal as they were, because this was a routine application, I must add. And of course, we had about 20% of those 80% coming back and revisiting the site. So try to, again, keep the public aware of what we're doing. And obviously, as of today, there haven't been too many individuals concerned with our proposal. With that, we have 478 units, of which just shy of 600 parking spots. So it's just over 1.25 parking spots per unit. Again, some of the details above here. So, Mr. Chairman, basically, as Councillor Pearson alluded to with respect to the holding provision, we're requesting that this matter, this file does not need to be within a holding provision. As indicated, there's the technical component regarding the water main, which has been addressed since April. In fact, it's been constructed and upgraded with the assistance of Mr. Sergi and his staff, and we are now putting that behind us. With regards to the environmental impact statement addendum, it is submitted. It is basically dealing with one key component, making sure that the abutting ESA constantly has water and stormwater running off so it doesn't dry out and die. The report prepared by Dugan Associates basically highlights this, reinforces it, and makes sure that the implementation of the development, the site plan process, and the construction adheres to this. So we feel that this isn't warranted for a holding provision. In fact, it will be dealt with during the site plan process, and we're confident as a result of the reports and within dialogue with the city that this is no longer going to be an issue. It's just a matter of timing and process. And finally, with respect to the traffic impact statement addendum, it was prepared, submitted to the Ministry of Transportation, and we're just awaiting the results or the permit itself. So that's probably within the next few weeks, we hope. Having said that, we're moving forward, as indicated, with site plan process and hopefully building permit as early as spring. So we'd ask the committee if they would indulge and respect the request to remove the H provisions. And again, our client is not in any way, shape, or form, and we want to make this very public, trying to alleviate or lose those conditions. We're basically trying to avoid another layer of process that's not necessary because you have the site plan process. Again, I don't want to speak on behalf of Yvette or staff, but they may want to comment, but we'd appreciate some impact.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mancha. Councillor Pearson has indicated.
Thank you. Sergio, I just wanted to clarify, so we have been in discussions about the issues on this particular property, and the bylaw that's before us today, by what I see, address the issues, even though you're saying most of this stuff has been completed, but the bylaw today does lay out the requirements, and you're in agreement with this?
Just for clarification, through Mr. Chairman, there are a couple of bylaw issues that we have to redefine between now and council. We just found them in the last few days, so the building department in their comments didn't have the appreciation and time. So we're going to clarify those particulars. They're very minor in nature. But with respect to the two reports, and Mr. Robichaud could speak to that, the two reports out of the three regarding the holding provision, we feel that we're going to be addressing them. So why have that extra layer of the holding provision?
But the bylaw amendments you're okay with as well, you're
Yes,
aware of. Thank you. I have no further questions of the applicant's
Thank
agent,
you.
but I do have staff, so.
Great.
Do you want to close
Please,
that?
so a motion to close the public meeting? Or we've already done that? Oh, forgive me, Councillor Pearson. Any other councillors having questions for Mr. Mancha, please indicate. Seeing none, Mr. Mancha, do we need a motion, Madam Clerk, to accept Mr. Mancha's presentation? Great. Moved by Councillor Pearson and seconded by Councillor Pasuta. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, Mr. Mancha, very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I appreciate your time.
Have a great day. And I'll now turn to Councillor Pearson for some further
Thank
questions.
you, Mr. Chairman, and through you to Yvette or Anita, then, Yvette, you did mention that we did not require the H zoning, so in the recommendation, I could remove that as part of the recommendation, is that correct? H provision, sorry. Anita?
Through the chair to the councillor, sorry, just so I'm clear, you're speaking to the two remaining items that are within the holding, the traffic study and the addendum for the EIS?
I understand that's in the bylaw, but in the recommendations, we're saying in the summary that a holding provision be included. So that can be removed? I thought that was commented.
Through the chair to the councillor, yes, I mean, Yvette explained a little bit, and the report explains the need for the items. At the time of the preparation of the staff report, the EIS addendum had not been submitted. It has subsequently been submitted and is under review by staff. They haven't finalized the review, but they have done a cursory review. And, the applicant has demonstrated or has identified that they would be willing to deal with these items through site plans, so staff would be supportive of the removal of the holding.
Councillor Pearson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So at the appropriate time, I'd like to, if it's appropriate, if you have no further questions, come back to me and I'll move the motion.
Councillor Green?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just for clarification, is there any difference in the oversight or process by moving it to site plan? Are they losing any kind of oversight in the process?
Please go ahead.
Through the chair to the councillor, no, to answer your question. The process, the review, the items that are required would be the same regardless of whether it was dealt with through a holding provision or through site plan.
Okay, I'm happy to support it then at the appropriate time.
Are there further questions? Seeing none, I will turn to Councillor Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and certainly thank the applicant. And as he's mentioned, I've been well involved with this particular development from Green Road to Millen Road since 2010, and he showed us the proposed plan that I've had since that day in my office. These particular lands, just so I can refresh some of my colleagues' memory on some of this that may not have been at the table back then, that these particular lands from Green Road to Millen Road were approved back in the 70s for 13 high-rise towers. So this is a downzoning in some of the areas, but it is complementary development along the waterfront, and it is the last stretch of waterfront that was available between Oshawa and Niagara Falls, if I remember correctly. Very proud of it. It's moving along very well. 5 separate developments going in there. So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move the approval with the amendments on the bylaw and the removal of the holding provision, and subject to, as well, I should add, Madam Clerk, possibly whatever amendments have to come forward at council with regards to the engineering.
Madam Clerk?
I just have a question because I don't believe the recommendations refer to a holding provision.
Anita, can you clarify, or Yvette?
Please.
Just want to be sure. Because it does say a holding provision has been included in the amending bylaw. So we've removed that from the bylaw then, correct? So I don't have to make reference to that.
Whichever member of staff.
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay, so that's on record then. Thank you, Madam Clerk, for catching that. So I'll move the recommendation as amended with the bylaw attachment today.
Very good.
Seconded by Councillor Green.
And Councillor Green is seconding.
Yep, thank you.
Any questions or comments before I call the vote? Seeing none, all in favor?
Carried.
Carried? Any opposed? None? Great. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So back in now, we're going to move to 6.5 is the proposed urban Hamilton official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment for property located at 149.5 Sherman Avenue North, Hamilton, Ward 3. I heard it to Councillor Green. Did you wish to comment?
Just on the speakers list.
Okay, that's fine. Oh, I would have recognized you, not a problem. So I'll start in the members of the public. I have to read this off. In accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act, please be advised that if a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Council of the City of Hamilton before Council makes a decision regarding the urban Hamilton official plan and zoning bylaw amendments, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Council of the City of Hamilton to the Ontario Municipal Board, and the person or public body may not attend or may not attend as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Municipal Board unless, in the opinion of the board, there are reasonable grounds to do so. So I'm going to ask again, are there any members of the public wishing to speak to this item before committee today? Again, are there any members of the public wishing to speak to this item before committee today? And a third time, are there any members wishing to speak to this item today before us on Sherman Avenue? Seeing none, can I have a motion to close the floor and the public portion? Councillor Green, Councillor Connolly, all in favor? Thank you. So seeing that there's no one here as far as public, did we wish to waive? Councillor Green, can I turn to you? Do you wish to waive the staff presentation?
Yes, Madam Chair, just to go on the record to say that I've been working closely with staff on this and proponents. It looks like a great project, respecting the features and spirit of the community, and so I'm happy to waive the presentation. Certainly for those that are interested, it could be made available online or through the clerk's department. Happy to provide that information to residents, but by and large, we're fairly supportive of affordable housing in Ward 3.
Thank you. So Councillor Green, you're going to move that, and it's seconded by Councillor Aidan Johnson to waive the staff presentation. All in favor?
Carried.
Thank you. And I know I have Mike Crawford of IBI Group, the agent for the owner, is in attendance. And do you wish to make presentation? Morning, Mike. Sorry, shout it out. Just shout it out.
We agree with recommendations, so we're fine. I don't need to do a presentation.
Perfect. Excellent. Thank you. So seeing that there are no issues or need to make presentation, Councillor Green, can I turn to you as to move the recommendation?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Moved by myself, seconded by my good friend Councillor Farr, that these recommendations be put forward and move forward. And if I could speak to it just for a moment. Quickly.
Absolutely.
I certainly appreciate all the work that's gone into this, and I had a chance to meet with the proponents. I've been updated by staff. It's a Habitat for Humanity project.
Excellent.
Fantastic work being done in Ward 3, and I know that with the affordable housing crunch that we're under, home ownership is a vital component, and affordable housing, affordable rentals are a vital component of mixed, healthy income neighborhoods, and I'm certainly glad and appreciative of the work that they're doing and continue to do, and hope that this be a pilot for other communities across the ward. I know, Madam Chair, we are currently under the leadership of Councillor Collins through Hamilton Housing, looking at ways to put units online, doing an asset map of publicly owned properties, city-owned properties, and finding out ways that we could be collaborative, create partnerships with organizations such as Habitat and all the other great social housing providers out there. So this is an early win for 2016. Not only that, but if I could just go on the record to say that the design elements that they put forward, respecting the community, respecting the streetscape, it really is an addition to the community. It's not your cookie cutter kind of utilitarian style unit. It's actually going to be very, very nice for the community, and all the work that I have seen with Habitat in Hamilton has reflected the same. So very appreciative to all the volunteers that go into building these units, and certainly look forward to seeing them take on more of the need that we have here around housing. So those are my comments. I'm certainly happy if there are any questions to hear those and to move forward with this project. Thank you, Madam Chair, for indulging my time.
Thank you, Councillor. So I'm going to, again, you've moved the motion, seconded by Councillor Farr. Councillor Partridge, you had a question?
No, I don't have a question. I'd just like to make a comment if you'll indulge me, and then it looks like Mr. Robichaud has something he'd like to say.
Anita, okay.
I just want to commend Habitat for Humanity and also our city staff. I'm very excited about this project and you know, certainly plan to be involved. I like the design. I've been working with Habitat for you know, the last couple of years, looking to do something similar in Waterdown, where we do have a real crisis around affordable housing. And so I'm quite excited about this, and I'm very, very happy to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anita or Mr. Robichaud? Sorry. Either one. Or Cam. Sorry. Good morning, Cam.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'd just like to introduce a few very minor bylaw changes. And these are very minor in nature. It begins on second page in 2A. This is the front yard depth. It's just a modification from 5.8 to 5.7 meters. It provides a little bit more flexibility for Habitat in their build.
Sorry, Cam, can I just ask, could you give us the page number of the appendix and the appendix?
Oh, I'm sorry. Certainly, it's Appendix C.
B, thank you.
And it's on 2A. So again, the changes to 5.7 from 5.8.
Okay.
The second one is B, and it's just a reference change. So instead of section 10F4C, it would be 10F4D, and this is for the side yard requirement. The third change is to add a special regulation to address accessory structures, which include sheds and rear decks, to permit them to have a 0 meter setback, 0 meter side yard setback along the interior side lot line. And this is consistent with the proposal, which is shown in Appendix D of the report.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Green, are you aware of all this? Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much for that. And so Councillor is asking that your motion is moved as amended so that we reflect these changes. Second by Councillor Farr. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, everyone. Okay, we're going to move on to 6.6 is applications to amend the Urban Hamilton Official Plan and Town of Ancaster zoning bylaw number 8757 for lands located at 1169 Garner Road, East Ancaster, Ward 12. Did I hear somebody tinkle? Question? No, thank you. Okay, thank you. So members of the public, in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act, please be advised that if a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Council of the City of Hamilton before Council makes a decision regarding the Urban Hamilton Official Plan and Town of Ancaster zoning bylaw amendments, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Council of the City of Hamilton to the Ontario Municipal Board, and the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Municipal Board unless, in the opinion of the Board, there are reasonable grounds to do so. Again, I'm going to go out to the public. This is with regards to an amendment to the Urban Official Plan for Ancaster, Garner Road. Is anyone in the public wishing to speak to this item? Going once? Anyone wishing to speak to this item? Sir, you are?
1175.
So do you wish to make, to speak to it today?
I just make
Okay, I
a
just
brief
have to.
comment.
Okay, so we'll go through the process then?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Maybe I should just ask, and do you feel that we need to do the presentation?
I just want to thank Alvin
Well,
Chan.
I just need to ask if you need a presentation, because we can get to that point.
No, I don't.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, sir. We just want to follow process. Okay, so again, for the third time, there's no one wishing to make presentation. Well, actually, I do have a gentleman, but we'll deal with waiving the staff presentation then. So we have that. So we're going to go forward then. Then I'm going to turn to committee, as you've heard from the resident, the citizen that wishes to make a comment. So can I have a motion to waive the staff presentation on this? And maybe I should ask Mr. Chan, is the board councillor in agreement with this application?
Through you, Madam Chair, we did approach the councillor in his office at the time of review of the proposal. He did not express any concerns, but that was a little ways back.
Okay, thank you, sir. So can I have a motion to waive the staff presentation? Moved by Councillor Green, second by Councillor Connolly. All in favor? Carried, thank you. Is the applicant or his agent here? Mr. Webb, good day again.
Good morning. Madam Chair, there is one item that we do wish to bring forward to committee.
So would you like to come down to the podium then? We'll do that process. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The planning instruments before you today are a zoning bylaw amendment and official plan amendment. And I just have to say this for the record. I'm actually here before you seeking a reduction in the number of permitted units. I don't seem to do that very often. There is an official plan amendment on the table today, and we've been working with staff. And part of the reason for the amendment is that this is one of the properties that was approved by City Council back during the transition period. The UHOP was on its way to being implemented, and there was an amendment approved by Council, but it never got implemented. So a large part of the amendment before you today is in fact the same as the amendment that was otherwise required when the original subdivision was approved back in 2012. Now, in working with Alvin and policy staff, they did add a refinement to the amendment at the last minute that unfortunately we only caught after it had gone to print. They're requesting a minimum density provision in the official plan amendment, and they put the number 53 into the document. The site plan that we've been working with all along the way, in fact, is slightly less than 53. So we're going to respectfully request that that 53 number be reduced. And because inevitably when I get through the site plan process, to give me that very minor amount of flexibility, again, so that I can go down, if I lose a unit, I'm respectfully requesting a minimum density of 50 units per hectare, rather than 53. So, Madam Chair, that's our only submission to you on this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. Any questions of committee? I am going to turn to Mr. Chan, and just, Mr. Chan, is that going to be a bylaw amendment, or is this just a friendly amendment to the recommendation?
Through you, Madam Chair, the Appendix B, the official plan amendment, would need a minor change to the number. Again, it currently states 53. Due to rounding, it was 52.6. It should have been rounded down to 52. But as per Mr. Webb's request to 50 to allow for flexibility, staff are supportive of that number as well. So we will amend prior to council the Appendix B to be 50 units per hectare as requested by Mr. Webb.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just going to hold off then. So you're okay with that? We're okay with that. We'll make sure it's taken care of. And I want to have a motion then to receive the presentation by Mr. Webb, moved by Councillor Green, second by Councillor Connolly. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And Councillor Green, question to Mr. Chan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. Chan, I'm just wondering for my own education, how does that materially affect the public plan, or the planning process, or the planning best practice with doing that? Because I've just never seen it, so I'm just wondering, are there any other material effects that causes?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, again, the change to 50 is to simply allow for flexibility due to design constraints. It is an irregular parcel. So through the site plan, if there are detailed designs, as Mr. Webb had indicated, they may lose a unit or two, which would result in an amendment, again, for the density. With respect to the secondary plan in this neighborhood, the Meadowlands Neighborhood 4, there actually isn't a physical minimum density associated with the secondary plan. However, Volume 2, Appendix B has a general density chart which prescribes 60 to 100 units for medium residential 2 designations, such as this parcel. So albeit that the secondary plan doesn't specifically identify a minimum, we were of the opinion that modification was required, but it maintains the intent and purpose of the policies of the Meadowlands Neighborhood 4 secondary plan, given that a physical minimum density actually isn't specified in the secondary plan. So it maintains the intent and purpose.
Pretty much as comprehensive as an answer as you're going to find. Thank you very much. The citation of the charts in the plan, it's excellent. Thank you. Clearly well prepared on this file. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor. So I'm going to ask then the gentleman if you'd like to come down to the podium, just so we do it officially. We'll ask you either before or after to write your name, address where required, just so we have a record that you attended, and you can put forward your comments. Good morning, sir.
Morning. Good morning. My name's Don Cascioli. I own 1157 Gardner Road and 1175 Gardner Road. I originally had some concerns with traffic flow and alignment. I had about an hour-and-a-half meeting yesterday with Mr. Alan Chan. He was very diligent and very informative, and he did inform me that once I do get going with my development, I could possibly hook up to the rear abutting roads to the Lisani development, and that would basically alleviate any type of traffic flow and or alignment. And I also have traffic control at 1175 Gardner Road, so the traffic would have another way of entering and exiting Gardner Road once this whole thing comes together. So once again, Mr. Chan, thank you very much for your time. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cascioli. It's always nice to get positive comments on developments. Really appreciate that. Councillor Farr, did you have a question to Mr. Cascioli? Oh, yeah, no, okay, so we'll get to that point. So I'm going to ask for a motion then to receive the presentation from the citizen and Mr. Chan. All moved by Councillor Farr, second by Councillor Collins. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, everyone. So now I'm going to turn to who would like to move the motion for approval of the application for Gardner Road. Moved by Councillor Connolly, second by Councillor Eden-Johnson. All in favor? And for the record, it has been voted on, but Alvin, you'll address the bylaw change. We don't have to make that here.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, I will have an updated official plan amendment Appendix B to the clerk.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much. So we're going to move on now. That's all of the public meetings. We're going to move on to the presentations where we have none. The discussions item is the Hamilton Municipal Heritage Committee Report 15-011, Item 2. This was this was the removal of the request for presentation by the owner of 2251 Rimo Ronies. We dealt with all that already, Madam Clerk, is that correct? So for the record, you want me to just verify that it's been approved that he make delegation, it's Mr. Tosh, at the February 2nd, 2016 meeting. Moved by Councillor Connolly, second by Councillor Johnson. All in favor? Just for the record, thank you. And we're going to move on now to reports. We have 8.2 is the Residential Drainage Assistance Pilot Program and Enforcement of Block Swales. This is the final report. I am going to turn to Jason Thorne. Sorry, I don't want to demote you. To Mr. Thorne as an amendment to the recommendation. Mr. Thorne.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. So report 8.2 to the Residential Drainage Assistance Program. If you read recommendation A, it indicates that funding for those positions be approved as part of the 2016 operating budget enhancements. What that should actually read is that these positions be referred to the 2016 operating budget.
Thank you, sir. So everybody understands that. Are there any questions on this report? Seeing none, can I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Farr, second by Councillor Collins, that the recommendations be be received and referred. All in favor? Thank you, everyone. Item 8.3 is the bylaw to regulate unauthorized parking on boulevards, side yards, and front yards. Questions or comments? Don't think we need presentation. Councillor Aidan Johnson. Councillor, thank you. I'll start the list.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Mayor. I'd just like to express my thanks to staff for this initiative. In Westdale, Ainsleewood in Ward 1, this is a very significant issue that I hear about a lot, basically because students have a bad habit of parking on front grass. So this bylaw was discussed last night at the Ainsleewood Westdale Community Association and was roundly praised and is perceived as being a very positive weapon in our city's arsenal in terms of getting at this nuisance problem in the student community and in other parts of the city. So thank you very much, and at the appropriate time, I would like to move the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Connolly.
Oh, thank you. I just need some clarification. One statement says all 15 councillors were consulted. I wasn't consulted. So I don't know how they're getting all this, all 15 were consulted. Unless it was when I was sleeping one night, and I'm sure.
So through Madam Chair, I apologize if there's any confusion. I know Bill Young, who is now off, had advised that he consulted with the councillors. This has been going on since 2013, so it may have been that he consulted with former Councillor Clark.
That helps a lot. So I have to ask Councillor Clark what's going on so I can understand what this is about.
Well, there's no
I mean, don't say something that's not right, that's all. I felt like, did I miss something? Was I sleeping at the wheel? And I didn't think I was, so. Because there is questions. I see there's two exceptions, Tim Hortons Field and Winona Pizza, which I agree with, because I park on the lawns at Tim Hortons Field, and I hope we weren't going to take that away. And I think half the people there make money on it. But I want to know, if I park on the apron between the street and the sidewalk, is that against this bylaw? Through the chair, please.
So through Madam Chair, it is against the law. It is not what this bylaw is about.
Of course not.
Currently, if you park on your front lawn and your vehicle is on the road allowance portion, we can go in and tag it. But if it's entirely on private property, then we have to do it under zoning. It's a more cumbersome type of bylaw. We have to send a different officer out during the day. So this is a current, provision in the bylaw, current violation to park on your front lawn. This is just allowing us to put it in the parking bylaw and enforce it more efficiently and effectively.
So when you say if I park on my front lawn, but it's not hitting the sidewalk, that's okay, even though part of that front lawn is city property?
If you park on your front lawn now and your vehicle is on the road allowance portion on the boulevard, we can tag it with a parking ticket. If you're entirely on your own private property, then we have to use the zoning bylaw, which is much more cumbersome to enforce.
I know a lot of people in my area park on the boulevards, on their apron, on the apron. And I don't want to get all these necessary calls because somebody's parking there overnight for some whatever reason. Is this going to be on a complaint basis, or are you going to actively go up and down the streets?
Madam Chair, this would primarily be on complaint unless we are doing a blitz. Say, for instance, in Ward 1, we're doing a blitz to cure a problem. The current practice about parking on the aprons, we're not changing our enforcement practices, and this bylaw will not change that practice as well.
And how do we get, through the chair again, how do we get the public aware of these changes? Like, is there something in the newspaper? Or is there, how do we enforce this so they know?
Madam Chair, we'll be doing education primarily by our website.
By our website. Think most people go to the website to see if there's any changes to where they can park?
So again, through Madam Chair, this doesn't change where you can park, it's just how we enforce it.
Or how you enforce it. I like to see more, we do this all the time, but I like to see more public exposure to the website. Seems a way to say, hey, we've done it. We were shown it on our website, but most people don't know that and don't read it. I could ask 100 people in my ward. I don't think one of them would have read, would have went to the website, see the changes. So, but this happens a lot when we change things. You know, there's a new law now about you have to be a meter away from bicycles when you're driving down the street, when you pass them. But nobody in the city knows it, or very few get that, and then they're going to get a ticket. It's just the whole process bothers me and how we let the public know what's going on. But, okay, I have no more questions. Thank you.
Councillor Farr.
Having the benefit of being here last term of council, I'll just thank staff. I could understand if you're new to this issue and are trying to predict the future and communicating to your residents, it would probably, I'd have the same questions. But having dealt with this file last term, and particularly here in the inner city, where I think it may be more prevalent, I'm very supportive of streamlining the enforcement process, which is what really is before us here, and appreciative that staff took the time to survey the 11 Ontario municipalities, what they're doing in Guelph, Windsor, Waterloo, Kitchener, Ottawa, Oshawa, Kingston, St. Catharines, Richmond Hill, and Oakville. So I only have one question that perhaps I may respond to in the form of an amendment at council if between now and then I manage to test the interest of the head of phys ed at McDonald High School, who in the past, as Marty knows, through you, Chair, to Marty, has 4 special events and probably on average 5 times a year utilize the field at McDonald as a parking fundraiser when we have a major event at Copps Coliseum with respect to raising funds for the school phys ed department, and in particular the football team and so forth. I tried to reach out on the weekend to the head of phys ed, and I haven't yet, so that's why I wouldn't mind maybe first offering publicly here in Planning Committee from the perspective of Marty, if this is something we may be able to contemplate, or is there another way we can save and accept for what's before us, still work as we have in the past, well together, to allow those maximum 5 occasions a year for McDonald High School to utilize their football field for extraordinary parking purposes, we'll say. Through you, Chair, to Marty for comment.
So through Madam Chair, whether we do it formally or informally, I'm sure we can work together to allow this to continue.
So in short, through you, Chair, I may not need then to make in an adjustment. I can just deal with that for the next few years anyway, through your group.
Through Madam Chair, yes, that's correct. I don't think we need a formal resolution on that.
Thank you. Councillor Green.
Thank you. And certainly recognizing that Tim Hortons Field has a very unique characteristic of the residents on premise parking that we tend to have there. And I appreciate that there's been some adjustments made for that. In line with some of the other concerns brought up by some other councillors regarding events, could there be a consideration for a special parking box or arrangement on the seat application? So if there are other events around the city, that maybe there's some language around, an amendment or a special adjustment to this program, should there be something that pop up in Stony Creek where a church group wants to do the same? Just something that if we're going to put this into code, and I appreciate the concerns brought up by Councillor Conley that, and I'm sure there's other councillors who might have some questions about events in their community. Could this be rolled over into the seat where it's just a very simple, streamlined checkbox, it's cleared with staff, off you go?
Madam Chair, for the most part, we do use discretion around special events, but in consultation with the ward councillors in the past, they wanted these Peach Festival and Tim Hortons Field formally identified. Certainly, we could do something through a seat application if it is necessary. It's not something we've discussed in consultation for this, but we could do something.
Yeah, okay. And it should be noted that this has gotten some traction. Before I read the file sometime last week, early getting back into office, Madam Chair, I got a call from the CBC wanting me to comment on it, and of course I couldn't because I hadn't read the report. So it is out there in the public conscious. I know that I have received both pro and con feedback from the community in terms of people wanting strict regulation. Some folks, it should be worth noting while we're here, have actually given feedback they don't want any on lawn parking during football games, which of course is just not feasible given the long 100-year tradition that we have of that economy. So and that need. So the economy, it's economy. You know, it's overground, on ground. So with that being said, it's certainly, I think it's the middle ground where we're allowing that to happen on game days and then bringing in regulation when it's not. So it seems to be a common sense resolution, and I'll be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Pasuta, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair Pearson. Through you to staff then, so this report, it says it affects citywide. So we're reaching into the rural areas too, through you, Madam Chair?
Madam Chair, yes, this is across the city where the zoning bylaw currently prohibits parking. We would be putting a provision in the parking bylaw so that we could enforce it more efficiently.
Okay, and then through you, Madam Chair, Marty then, so if there's complaint driven, somebody complains about a neighbor in the rural area, and then the zoning bylaw, you said it goes through a zoning bylaw, it's a little more difficult to enforce or to put in place?
So through Madam Chair, when we force under the zoning bylaw, we have to use a different type of officer. It's a more complex bylaw, and we have to usually do a Part 3 through the courts rather than to simply put a parking ticket on a car. So when someone complains about a car parked on a front lawn, it's much more cumbersome to enforce that violation through the zoning bylaw than it is through the parking bylaw. I can't recall any areas in the rural area that have been affected by this. I think there have been a couple in the urban portions of your ward, but we haven't had any that I'm aware of, any issues in the rural areas.
Okay, Madam Chair, I'm just maybe reaching here a little bit because when I read the definition of a motor vehicle, it says an automobile, motorcycle, motor-assisted bicycle, and any other vehicle propelled or driven otherwise than by muscular power. So if you get out into the rural areas, and let's say I'm reaching here a little bit, we get in the rural areas and we're getting more urban people coming to the agricultural district, and there is farms that have livestock and have manure, and they're starting to complain because a farmer parks a tractor in his front lawn, a manure spreader, and the farm's right by the road. Can that be an issue that somebody can complain about, and it comes back to the city to bylaw?
So through Madam Chair, I'm not sure that the zoning bylaw would prohibit those types of incidents. You know, I can't imagine how this can apply to a rural agricultural property. We can continue that discussion offline if you want, but I just simply can't see how this would affect it.
Well, thank you for that. I know sometimes how controversial it gets out there in the countryside. So I just want to make sure that I don't entrap any of my fellow country people out there into something like this. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, and I just want to make a comment, so I'll relinquish the chair to Councillor Ayton Johnson.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. So I want to thank staff for this, and I did meet with Mr. Bishop with regards to this bylaw, and I'm really pleased with it coming forward and sort of clarifying, because there has been some confusion over the last number of years. And I certainly am concerned or agree with the comments Councillor Connolly raised with regards to advertising. And I've said it before, not so much that maybe we can put it in the information sections that we put in the Spectator periodically. We do overleafs. Also, I've tried to encourage staff many times to use the tax notices envelopes, and we do the little reviews that go in of information. That might be another avenue to put information in for the public. I know there's a lot of information we want to cover off a lot of times, but I'm just going to leave that with staff, that those are potential. And I know Councillor Connolly and myself, we have spaces in the Stoney Creek News that we put in our newsletters, and I try and put something that seems to be an issue every month in there, so enlightening and making residents in my ward anyways in Stoney Creek aware of. So those are avenues, and certainly leave staff with suggestions. But I am pleased, and I know a comment was made with regards to apron, parking on driveway aprons. That has been a bylaw that it is not allowed in Stoney Creek and has been since I was councillor in 1991 in Stoney Creek. So we don't allow parking on driveway aprons in the Stoney Creek area, and that is not changing. So I'm very pleased with this, and with that, I'll take the chair back.
Thank you.
Thank you to Councillor Johnson. Can I have a motion then on the resolutions before us? Moved by Councillor Aidan Johnson, second by Councillor Jason Farr. All in favour? Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Gary. Now we're going to move on to 8.4 is the Hamilton Municipal Heritage Committee report. Are there any questions with regards to this report? If not, may I have a motion to receive? Moved by Councillor Partridge. There's not a recommendation on here. Yes, there is a recommendation. Move the recommendation, Councillor Partridge. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Partridge, second by Councillor Connolly. All in favour? Carried. Thank you, everyone. We have no motions today. Are there any notices of motion? Seeing none, I'm going to just go on to a motion to amend the outstanding business list as outlined in item 11.1A and B, including a new date for item P, respecting redevelopment of city-owned surface parking lots. So we have a motion on that. Then 11.1 is the outstanding business list. Is the new dates required for item L, pool enclosures bylaw, to February 16, 2016. Item V for Victor, planning application fees, new date April 5th, 2016. Item Z, staff to report on the enforcement options with respect to ensuring elevators in multi-story residential buildings are operational, new due date February 16, 2016. And item P, redevelopment of city-owned surface parking lots, new date April 5th, 2016. And B is to remove item F, bylaw to regulate parking on boulevards and front and side yards, and item H, parking facing the wrong way. Can I have a motion to amend and remove? Moved by Councillor Collins, second by Councillor Connolly. All in favour? Carried. Thank you, everyone. We have no private and confidential. I have a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor, my apologies. Sorry.
So I was just wondering if our general manager had any updates that he'd like to provide.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And I did want to introduce members of committee to the new SPM and lead of our urban team under Anita's shop, Kimberly Harrison McMillan. Is here. So she has now joined the team. We stole Kimberly from the private sector. She's been working for the past several years with Fram Group, working on a lot of their mid-rise, high-rise projects around the GTA. And so she is now going to be leading the urban team, taking over from Ed John, who committee will recall has taken on a new responsibility working on some of the planning in the West Harbour waterfront area and related to some of our affordable housing.
Thank you for catching that, Councillor Partridge, and welcome. Hope it's been exciting so far, and it only gets better. Thank you, Jason. Excellent. Councillor Farr.
I said off the top of the meeting I was hoping we could get an update on this door issue. I just want to know through you, Chair. I guess it's Jason. Ed's gone somewhere, our chief building official. But what are we doing to address this? Through you to Jason, this current issue of locking the doors during committee.
So, Councillor Farr, the clerk, Madam Clerk will address that.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Ida.
The doors were installed by facility staff, and there are several options. You can have a full opening, a partial opening, and then there's a closed one, closed, which we are using now, and also closed for in-camera sessions. And there's also a one-way option that the installers are going to come on Thursday to fix. It wasn't working. So I think it's more a matter of thought that keeping them closed and having the public leave by the doors and the staff leave by the lounge, that would work. But if this is a problem, we could try something else.
So, as I mentioned off the top, the work was done probably at a great expense. I don't even want to ask how much to address the accessibility issue. And so we're not addressing that issue by locking the doors during committee. I understand the intent and appreciate the reasoning for now. But if it's just to elude distraction, I would rather have the distraction and maybe go with this partial opening for now. I don't know whether this is even the committee to address this, but it is a building project, so that falls under planning and ECDEP. But a partial opening rather than a locking during committee, it's just the optics of maybe you don't see, you got the controls there, I notice, Ida, so you're facing away from those doors. And if we have somebody with accessibility issues wondering why they're not opening like they do for Captain Kirk every time, then it's just a bad scenario all around. So a partial opening sounds like something we might want to test now with these upcoming committee meetings this week, and then kind of go work from there. I don't know. I'm interested to hear what the committee may feel about this. But right now, early on, I just got an uneasy feeling about locking doors during major committee and ultimately council meetings.
Thank you, Councillor, and I'm sure staff will be reviewing this and deciding which are, what are some of the better options. But I did question the clerk yesterday when I was in chair yesterday at Board of Health, that the clerk is able to, and if we just signal somebody's there ready to come in, they just push the button and the door does open. And I know it doesn't, but they don't have to physically get up and open the door. So it's a little bit different than before, but I appreciate the staff have some options to look at, and we'll see what works best.
So can I move accordingly then, just that we try henceforth the partial opening as opposed to getting up and unlocking during committee and council? Just give that a whirl. I understand we've now tried for 2 days locking it, and I'm just not feeling comfortable, given the nature of the project. Accessibility is the key reason why we've taken on this expense. I don't have a seconder for that motion, though, so.
No, we don't.
Seconded by Councillor Partridge.
We don't technically need a motion on it, it's just direction, Councillor. We'll resolve the problems. Yeah, okay? Yeah.
Okay, great, even
Councillor
better,
Conley,
thank you.
did you have a comment?
Just on the same thing, locking them is a safety problem.
Yeah.
If there was ever a major fire in here, you're not going to get everybody out these two doors. That door has to open. So locking them, I don't think is an option. It really is not, from a safety point of view.
Okay. So direction's been given. On that, any other comments before I close off? Can I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Councillor Aidan Johnson, seconded by Councillor Matt Green. All in favor? Thank you, everyone.